What would you do if a flight attendant questioned a calm, quiet man's right to wear a simple crucifix around his neck, without even realizing that man was Kit Harington? What started as a judgmental glance at a modest silver pendant would soon turn into a moment that would deeply impact every passenger on that flight. When the plane finally touched down, no one there would ever forget the words he said, and especially the way he said them. But before I tell you that story, answer me this in the comments. Where are you watching from? Tell me your city, state, or country. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow there will be another inspiring story made especially for you. The lobby of Los Angeles International Airport was bustling with people. Passengers rushed through the corridors, children pulled colorful suitcases, executives typed away on their cell phones while anxiously glancing at the flight boards. And in the midst of all this chaos, a man walked by, seemingly oblivious to it all. His pace was calm and serene, with no sign of anxiety. He wore a simple black t-shirt, worn jeans and well-worn sneakers. No expensive watch, no luxury accessories, no security guards clearing the way. That man was Kit Harington. Some people tried to figure him out. Could it be him? Some wondered silently, but most didn't even notice him. He passed by almost unnoticed, like any other ordinary traveler. In that environment of ostentation and formality, his simplicity stood out. And perhaps that was exactly why he caught the attention of the most observant. But there was one detail that was impossible to ignore. Around his neck, a small silver crucifix glinted softly under the airport lights. It was nothing extravagant, nor did its size draw attention, and yet it seemed to carry a meaning far greater than any luxury jewel. Mr. Harington walked on, without showing any arrogance. He didn't hide who he was, but he didn't announce himself either. He was just being himself. When he reached the first-class boarding line, he presented his ticket to the flight attendant. The name printed on it made it clear that there was no mistake. The woman, impeccable posture, uniform neatly pressed, analytical gaze, frowned slightly as she checked the ticket. "Sir," she hesitated, looking from the ticket to him. "I think there's been some mistake. This line is for first-class passengers." Kit didn't change his expression. He just smiled slightly, almost serenely. "I'm in the right place," he replied, with the same calmness of someone who knows exactly who he is. The flight attendant, whose name tag read Carla, checked the ticket again. Everything was correct. The name was legitimate. She knew who Kit Harington was, of course, but she didn't recognize him right away. The total absence of any trace of ostentation, that simple manner, old sneakers, casual clothes, didn't match the passenger she was used to seeing in first class. Even after confirming that the ticket was valid, doubt still lingered in her eyes. She allowed him to pass, but her eyes followed him as he walked to his seat. And inside her, something stirred. Why? Perhaps it was the disconcerting contrast between the simplicity of that man and the luxury of that environment, or perhaps it was that crucifix. There, hanging slightly visible above his black t-shirt, the small silver pendant seemed to exert a force that she herself could not explain. For a few seconds, Carla stood motionless, her eyes fixed on that symbol. Something disturbed her, something she couldn't name, but she felt it. The plane took off smoothly. The sound of the engines mingled with the controlled peace of the cabin. The lights were dimmed, creating a cozy atmosphere. Mr. Harington remained there, serene, sitting in his first-class seat. He didn't touch his cell phone, didn't read, didn't look out the window. He just breathed calmly. And the crucifix? It was still there. Silent, small, but somehow carrying a weight that seemed to go far beyond its own material. In the crew's reserved area, Carla watched. There was something about him that made her uncomfortable, but she couldn't explain why. She had served many celebrities. Some were extravagant, others demanding, others even arrogant. But Kit was different. and in a way that bothered her more than if he were like everyone else. It didn't take long. Carla took a deep breath, straightened her posture, and walked toward him. Her voice was polished, trained, but with a firmness that hid a certain discomfort. "Sir, just to reiterate, we have some guidelines regarding the display of religious symbols in common areas, especially in this booth. We ask, if possible, for a little discretion." Kit then turned with that same serenity in his eyes and replied calmly, "I'm sorry, but exactly what rule am I breaking?" Carla maintained an apparently cordial tone of voice, but her body tensed subtly. "It's not a matter of breaking rules," she explained, adjusting her uniform slightly, "but rather of maintaining a neutral atmosphere in the cabin. Some passengers may—" She hesitated, searching for the right words. "Feel uncomfortable with certain symbols." Mr. Harington glanced at the small crucifix resting against his chest. "I've traveled like this countless times. I've never had any problems," he replied with the same serenity as before. That response she hadn't expected. Her face showed, even if only for a fraction of a second, an almost involuntary discomfort. "Yes, well, times have changed. Some travelers are more sensitive." Her hand made a vague gesture toward the necklace, as if she didn't even want to touch it. "Perhaps I could keep this for you, temporarily." The suggestion hung in the air, like a veiled insult. It was as if the object were contaminated, something she preferred to keep at a distance. Yet didn't flinch. His response was firm but calm. "This cross, it's not an ornament. It's not meant to provoke." His eyes met hers, intense, unwavering. "It's part of who I am." Carla forced one of those professional smiles, trained more to end situations than to generate real connection. "We understand and respect that, sir." Her words sounded kind, but there was an undertone, almost a veiled order. "We just ask that personal displays be more discreet, especially in the premium cabin." In fact, that request didn't seem as optional as she was trying to make it sound. The mood inside the cabin changed. Discreetly, a woman across the aisle looked up, curious. 2 seats back, a man paused his music and took off one of his headphones. The transformation in the environment was almost imperceptible, but real. A soft tension, invisible, but everyone could feel it. Mr. Harington remained serene, unshaken. His voice sounded calm, yet charged with a restrained force like thunder before a storm. "With all due respect, I feel like I'm being treated differently." Carla blinked rapidly. "Pardon?" She feigned not understanding. "If someone were wearing a necklace with a tree, a star, or a stone, would you also ask them to hide it?" His question was precise, accurate, like an arrow. She opened her mouth, ready to respond, but no words came out. There was a short, uncomfortable silence. She took a deep breath, trying to regain control of the situation. "It's not about that." Kit tilted his head slightly, looking directly into her eyes. "Then, what is it about?" Silence, a dense, almost palpable pause. With no answer, Carla took a step back, looked away and muttered, I'll give you a moment." He didn't look away. "That cross, it saved me more than once," he said, lowering his voice slightly. And that sentence, it didn't sound like an empty metaphor. It carried weight, the weight of memories of battles fought far from the spotlight, in war zones, in hospital rooms, on nights so dark that hope seemed to have disappeared. The small crucifix, once just a silver detail against his black t-shirt, now seemed to weigh more than any suitcase on that plane. "I'm not going to hide it," he added. "Not now, not ever." For a moment, Carla's mask cracked, a visible crack. Frustration, discomfort, disbelief. She couldn't hide it. And the passengers noticed. All of them. Some shifted in their seats, others whispered to each other. One man, more daring, discreetly adjusted his cell phone camera, positioning it without drawing attention. Another, further back, whispered, "That is Kit Harington?" But Kit didn't even notice. He wasn't there for a show. He never had been. All he was doing was simply defending what he believed in. Carla, realizing that the situation was getting out of hand, straightened up, assuming a more rigid, almost military posture. "If you insist, I'll have to report this to the captain." Mr. Harington looked her straight in the eye, calm, confident. "Do what you have to do," he replied, without raising his voice, without a trace of arrogance, just conviction. Then he bowed his head slightly and added, with a look so penetrating that it seemed to pierce her soul, "The problem isn't what I carry in my chest, it's what I see in your eyes." Silence, total, absolute. A silence so thick that it seemed even the sound of the plane's engines had fallen silent. Carla backed away. The shock was not only in the words, but in the truth they carried. She opened her mouth, then closed it, and said nothing more. Because everyone there, everyone, knew. She had no more arguments. The plane was already gliding through the clouds at cruising altitude. Outside, only blue sky and white clouds. Inside, the luxury of first class contrasted with an invisible but undeniable tension. Mr. Harington remained where he was, motionless, steadfast. The small crucifix rested peacefully against his chest. Carla then walked back to the crew area. Her steps were now hard, tense, but she hadn't given up yet. She stopped again near his seat. Her face remained neutral, but her lips were tight, almost trembling with irritation. "Sir," her voice came out drier, "I've received comments from other passengers. Some are uncomfortable." Mr. Harington replied in the same calm tone, but with a firmness that was impossible to ignore. "Uncomfortable with what?" She faltered. For a moment her expression betrayed the answer before she even spoke, but still she hesitated to put it into words. With the display of ideological symbols in a shared space, she took a deep breath, trying to maintain her composure. "Our goal," she continued, "is to ensure that everyone feels comfortable during the flight." Kit didn't even blink. "So, a symbol of faith makes people feel uncomfortable." Carla held her breath. Briefly, almost imperceptibly, but she held it. "Imagine if everyone started wearing political pins, religious insignia, ideological slogans," said Carla, her tone a mixture of rigidity and argument. "It would end up creating divisions in a space that should represent neutrality and unity." Mr. Harington leaned forward slightly. His voice didn't rise, but now it carried a new weight, dense, impossible to ignore. "Perhaps," he began, "the problem isn't the symbol. Perhaps it's the way people have been taught to react to it." The words echoed in the cabin as if they had been amplified. More than any noise, more than any ambient sound, they cut through the air and landed in the ears of every passenger. The man holding the cell phone didn't even try to hide it. He discreetly pressed the record button. Noticing this, Carla immediately straightened her posture, as if trying, with the simple rigidity of her own body, to regain an authority that was beginning to slip through her fingers. "I'm just following protocol," she said, her voice now firmer, almost cutting. "If you continue to refuse, I will be forced to call security." Now, Mr. Harington had everyone's attention, absolutely everyone. Heads turned, glances crossed, a heavy silence almost suffocating and filled the cabin. The kind of silence that only comes when something real happens, something no one expected. But deep down, they knew they needed to hear. Kit didn't move. He didn't change his tone. He didn't even blink. He fixed his eyes on her and replied with a calmness that seemed to carry centuries of conviction. "Call whoever you want, but understand one thing. The problem isn't what I carry in my chest. It's what I see in your eyes." Silence. A silence that seemed to freeze time itself. Carla stood there, frozen, as if she were trapped in front of a mirror she didn't know existed until then. And now, forced to face herself, she couldn't look away. His words were not judgmental. They were not accusatory. They were simply true. A truth so pure, so naked, that it hurt. At the back of the cabin, another flight attendant stopped what she was doing. She paused. She watched. The couple filming exchanged glances, but kept the camera pointed discreetly. and without anyone agreeing, some passengers simply nodded their heads. At that moment, there was no religion, there was no politics, there was no ideology. There was awareness, there was reality. Carla took a deep breath. Her jaw was clenched, tense. She didn't know it, but at that very moment, the tide was beginning to turn. Kit remained exactly as he was, unshakable. The small crucifix was still there, resting firmly on his chest, not as a provocation, but as a truth that no one, absolutely no one, could erase. He didn't need to move, but everyone around him moved. The energy in the cabin was no longer the same. What had previously seemed like just a silent discomfort was now almost palpable. A kind of invisible electrical tension that made people shift in their seats, lower their voices, and pay more attention. In the galley, Carla crossed her arms. Her eyes, normally cold and calculating, now sparkled. But it wasn't just irritation, it was defiance. Defiance mixed with discomfort, with the bitter feeling that her authority, the one she had always carried with such pride, was being questioned. Right there in front of everyone. She felt the stares, she felt the judgment, and it wasn't just Kit's. It was from the crew, from the passengers, maybe even from herself. Her fingers drummed against the tablet attached to the service card. Her uniform, which had seemed comfortable before, now felt tight around her neck, as if, suddenly, it was a size too small. She took a deep breath. She turned on her heels, and her voice, harder than before, said, "Nicole, I need you up front." The young flight attendant, surprised, blinked. "Is something wrong?" she asked, visibly apprehensive. Carla forced a tense, almost mechanical smile. "We have a situation that needs to be handled according to protocol. The passenger in seat 2B is refusing to comply with a direct request. I'm going to escalate this." Nicole, clearly uncomfortable, hesitated. "Is this because of the necklace?" Carla looked away. She didn't answer directly. "It's about maintaining a precedent." With little else to say, Nicole followed her, though each step seemed heavier than the last. Back in Mr. Harrington's row, the passengers tried unsuccessfully to hide their curiosity. Some pretended to look at the movies, others at their books, but no one was paying attention to any of that. All attention was focused on that small space in first class. The man near the partition continued recording, and this time he didn't even bother to hide it. Carla returned, more rigid, more tense, with Nicole behind her, watching silently but clearly uncomfortable. "Mr. Harrington," she said now in a louder, more formal tone, "this is my final warning. If you continue to disregard the cabin rules, I will be forced to call the captain, and if necessary, call security as soon as we land." Kit turned slowly, looking her straight in the eye, calm, unperturbed. At that exact moment, he noticed something curious. She was also wearing a necklace, discreet, yes, but it was there. And suddenly, everything she said seemed forced, rehearsed, as if she herself no longer believed what she was saying. And in that thick silence, it all sounded false. Now more passengers were looking without any pretense. There was no shouting, there was no scandal. Just the certainty that something much, much bigger than it seemed was happening there. Nicole, who until then had only been watching, broke the silence. Maybe we should talk to the captain together before this goes too far." Carla gave her a hard look, sharp as a knife. But it was too late. The situation had already changed. And what was becoming increasingly clear was that she was losing control. 5 minutes later, the cockpit door opened, and through it appeared the captain, Captain Morales, a man in his 50s, a serene face marked by the lines of time, the kind of person whose presence could be felt even before he spoke. He walked down the aisle, unhurried but with presence, a presence that instantly made the entire cabin fall even more silent. When she reached the galley, Carla practically threw herself at him, speaking quickly, tripping over her own words. "Sir, we have a passenger who is refusing to follow cabin etiquette. I have asked him several times to hide an object that may cause discomfort to others. He refused, and with that, the situation ended up escalating, said Carla, trying to control her voice. Captain Morales heard everything, without interrupting, without looking away, just absorbing every word. When she finished, he turned to Nicole. "And what is your perspective?" he asked in a calm but heavy tone. Nicole took a deep breath. "Mr. Harington," she began, choosing her words carefully, "has caused absolutely no trouble. He has not been disrespectful." She glanced discreetly at Carla before continuing. "He just refuses to hide the necklace." Morales nodded slowly. Then he turned to the cabin. Everyone, absolutely everyone, watched, even those who pretended to be reading or watching something. No one wanted to miss a single second of what was about to happen. The captain then walked toward Mr. Harington. His posture was impeccable. His hands were clasped behind his back. He looked like someone who was about to say something important. He stopped beside him. "Mr. Harington," he began, "I am Captain Morales. I understand there has been a misunderstanding regarding a policy on this aircraft." His voice was firm but respectful. "It is my duty to ensure the well-being of everyone on this aircraft, the crew and the passengers." He took a deep breath and looked directly into Kit's eyes. "I would like to hear your side of the story." Mr. Harington slowly raised his gaze. His expression was calm. His voice was firm, but without any trace of aggression. "The flight attendant asked me to hide this," he replied, lightly touching the small crucifix that rested on his chest. "She claimed it might upset some people. I just said no." Silence. But it wasn't an uncomfortable silence. It was the silence of someone who knows they are about to hear something they will never forget. "I explained that this crucifix has been part of my life for years," he continued. "It's not an accessory, nor is it an ideological symbol. It's a reminder, a symbol of survival, of faith." He took a deep breath before adding, "It was that faith that kept me going when all seemed lost." He looked at the captain. "I don't wear it to provoke. I wear it because it reminds me that I'm still here." The cabin fell so silent that even the sound of a seatbelt being fastened 3 rows ahead sounded like thunder. Captain Morales absorbed every word, and when Mr. Harington finished, he didn't respond right away. He then turned slowly to Carla. His tone was calm, but with a weight that made it clear to anyone that this was no longer a simple conversation. "Was he at any point disrespectful?" he asked. Carla opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Not a word. The captain then looked at Nicole. "Any aggressive behavior?" Nicole shook her head almost automatically. "No, sir, none." Morales took a deep breath. The weight of responsibility now rested entirely on his shoulders. But deep inside the aircraft, Carla was standing half hidden behind the galley curtain. She felt her cell phone vibrate in her pocket. Once, twice, 3 times. She didn't need to look. She knew. The video was already playing on the internet. Her face, her voice, the exact moment. She asked Kit Harington to hide that little crucifix. Now, it was being debated, commented on, shared by thousands, maybe millions of people. The air seemed heavier, but it wasn't fear. It wasn't panic. It was shame, but not shame from the repercussions. It was shame from the truth. The truth that she now finally saw. The scene replayed in her mind, but this time no longer from her point of view. She now saw it as Nicole saw it, as the passengers saw it, as Mr. Harington saw it. And for the first time, she realized she had not been neutral, nor fair. She had judged silently, politely, professionally. And that was it. Exactly that made everything even worse. In her head, a memory. Her grandmother's voice, soft, almost a whisper. Kindness isn't just what you say, it's what you choose not to hide. And suddenly, Carla realized, she had spent her life hiding behind manuals, behind protocols, behind control. Now, there was nowhere left to hide. The sound of Captain Morales' voice broke the silence in the cabin. Through the intercom, his message was clear. This airline is and always will be committed to respect, to inclusion, and to the freedom of every passenger to express their faith without fear and without shame. The words were discreet, but everyone understood. Mr. Harington remained seated, calm, silent, the small crucifix visible. He did not celebrate. He did not rejoice. He didn't need to. And somehow, that hurt more than any response he could have given. Carla took a deep breath. She knew exactly what she had to do, but she had no idea how to start. Her feet felt like lead as she walked down the aisle. The reflection of the lights shone on the seats and got in the attentive eyes of each passenger. When she finally reached Mr. Harrington's row, silence spread like a blanket throughout the cabin. She stopped. She stood before him, and she looked. He was there, quiet, serene. She opened her mouth, but she couldn't find the words, so she let her body speak. Carla knelt down. A collective sigh swept through the plane, a murmur that seemed to run like an invisible wind from one side of the cabin to the other. Her voice, when it finally came out, was low, trembling. I was wrong. Another murmur, louder. She took a deep breath, but didn't stop. I convinced myself that I was protecting the cabin, that I was being professional, but in reality, I was just protecting my own discomfort. Her eyes filled with tears. I spent years hiding behind this false idea of neutrality. I thought it made me strong, but it only blinded me. She then looked directly at him. Her voice faltered. Do you forgive me? Mr. Harington was silent. For a few seconds, that seemed like an eternity. And then, slowly, he stood up. He held out his hand. Carla took it. He helped her to her feet, without rushing, without words, without needing anything else. The applause began timidly and grew, but at the moment remained intimate, silent and powerful. Carla was no longer the same. She felt exposed, but at the same time, strangely light. For the first time in years, she wasn't hiding anything. Mr. Harington was still holding her hand, not to prove anything, just to be there. She murmured, almost as if talking to herself. I don't know how to fix what I did. Mr. Harington looked at her kindly. His gaze was not judgmental, only understanding. You don't have to fix it. He paused briefly. Just the fact that you're dealing with it is more than most people do. Carla blinked. She let those words settle inside her. And when she looked around, she noticed something she hadn't expected. No one, absolutely no one, was looking at her with disapproval. The looks were not judgmental. They were empathetic, committed. For the first time in a long time, she realized that she was not being condemned. She was being welcomed. Mr. Harington then pointed to the empty seat next to him. Sit here, if you want. She didn't say anything. She just nodded her head. And she sat down, but not with the stiffness typical of the uniform, not with the weight of fear or control. For the first time, she sat down just as herself. She looked down. She took a deep breath, and almost in a whisper she confessed, I used to believe in something. Her voice trembled. Before this job, before the rules, before the protocols, and before the fear. 2 weeks later, the soft morning light filtered through the curtains of a simple apartment. A cell phone camera was positioned on a small table. In front of it, Carla. No makeup, no uniform, no masks. Just her, in her hand, a small silver crucifix. The same one Kit Harington had given her at the end of that flight. She looked at the camera. Her eyes hid nothing. Then she began to speak. I spent years thinking that being professional, it meant hiding who I was. She paused, looking at the crucifix fondly. Hiding my beliefs, my feelings, my humanity. She took a deep breath. She held that little piece of silver as if it were something much bigger. But this, she lifted the crucifix slightly. This reminded me what it means to be human. A smile, a slight smile, a smile, a genuine smile. A smile that, for the first time in years, hid nothing. Today, her voice softened. I'm not hiding anymore. She paused briefly. She breathed. She felt. Thank you, Mr. Harington. And at that moment, at that exact moment, Carla realized, for the first time in a very, very long time, she felt whole, complete, true. She then pressed the button. She stopped the recording. She stood there in silence, holding the small crucifix, but not as a religious symbol. No, that piece of silver was now a reminder of courage, of empathy, of grace, that sometimes true power isn't in control, but in choosing kindness. And that was Carla's emotional journey. A simple act of firmness and compassion by Kit Harington completely transformed the way she saw the world. But now, I want to hear from you. What did you think of this story? Do you believe that true strength lies in remaining true to who we really are? Tell me here in the comments. I read everything. And look, if this story touched you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who could today may need to hear the message of respect, faith, and redemption. And of course, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any more stories like this. Stories that prove that small actions can have impacts we can't even imagine. Want more inspiration? Then click on one of the videos appearing on your screen right now and dive into another powerful story. See you in the next video. Until then.